Hello everyone, my name is Amal Nirgudkar. I'm the CEO of Patient Prism, and I'm here at our makeshift Patient Prism studios at the Dykema Fall event called Doubling Dental. And I'm here with my good friend, our client, Elliot Zibel from Select Dental Management, an amazing emerging DSO, 4 years old. They're about 40 offices now, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you, Elliot.
Yeah, great. I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me.
You guys have, you started in 2018, grew the business. Obviously, like everybody, you went through 2020 and you learned some lessons during that period. And now you're growing back again in 2021. What are the lessons that you learned in 2020 through the pandemic? Because you had a lot of time on your hand, just like I did,
Yeah.
to work on our businesses and think about how do we do this better? And what are you doing better in 2021 than you did before when you started the business through 2020?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So, in hindsight, COVID is probably the best thing that happened for our business, although it certainly didn't feel that way at the time.
Right.
But I think really what COVID enabled us to do was focus internally on building sustainable processes and systems, and also just making sure we're all on board with the same vision, and we had an understanding of where we were trying to go. Because if we don't know the destination, how do you actually get from point A to point B? So COVID forced us all as a leadership team to work together and solve problems, and then define what we wanted to be when we grow up. And I think what really happened is we developed a really strong leadership team. I got to the point where I couldn't do everything anymore, right? Which is, I think, a common path for entrepreneurs. And you think you can do everything, and you think you can do it well, but at some point, to be able to scale, you need to empower people and have a great team around you. And so we built that team out, we empowered them, and that enabled us to come out of COVID with real clarity. We retained almost 100% of our team.
Wow.
And our volumes came back very quickly, so we were able to really take advantage of that and continue to grow when I think some other folks were a little bit burdened with other things or just didn't have that opportunity.
And that's probably one of the secrets to success for organizations that have really thrived in 2021 is their ability to retain their teams, inspire them. Because obviously, as we found out empirically, that the demand for dental services is plenty. Right? What constraint has been there in 2021 has been supply.
Yep.
And now supply of operatories, supply of doctors, hygienists, assistants, and everything.
Yep.
And the fact that you were able to retain most of them speaks volumes of the changes or the communication or whatever you did to get these people bought into the vision, mission, and core values of Select Dental. Is that true?
Yeah, and I think it's not just me. I mean, we have a decentralized, affiliation-driven model, and so my doctor partners have run really successful practices, and they have long tenured employees, and our job is to really support them and to help them provide even better experience and care for their patients. And so I think that we've done a good job of preserving the identity of that practice, and also challenging them to grow and improve. And I think people, at the end of the day, they want to feel good about what they're doing. It's all about the patient, and there's a lot of other things that happen around that, but I think as long as we all understand that we're here to help our patients, and everyone understands the why behind everything you're doing and how it relates back to that patient, that's something that's easy for people to get behind and feel good about. If they're being treated well, one of our core values is positive energy from the energy bus, John Gordon.
Right.
You got to get rid of those people that are dragging people down.
Have negative energy, absolutely.
And so if you have an environment where people feel good about what they're doing, they like the people they're working with, they're being fairly compensated and rewarded, you have great retention.
What I'm hearing from you is that the glue that binds all your offices that are affiliated with your organization is culture. Is that the glue that binds everybody? Because at the end of the day, if you're not going to wear your core values on your sleeve, whether you are a dental assistant, you're a front office, or you're a doctor, or you're a CEO, you can't really get that alignment.
Yep.
And that was one of my questions that you answered automatically, is that how do you get alignment when you, in the acquisition model traditionally, when you are really acquiring or getting affiliated with somebody that already has built a certain set of structures and processes and protocols, and they're used to the way they're doing things, how do you get them all aligned around a similar mission, vision, and core values?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it really comes down to the selection in the partnership process. And I always say to my partners, like, this is a marriage, right? It's you know, we're going to be in this for a long time. We're going to be living under the same roof. So we really have to make sure that there's a fit here.
Right.
And I think we're really, really diligent about making sure everyone understands what our goals are and what we value, and that they are on board with that. And our, you know, we talked about positive energy. We talk about growth a lot. It took me a while to be able to just, I was almost embarrassed that I wanted to grow, but now we lead with that. We say, we are growth oriented. We want to grow personally, professionally, and at the practice level. Because, you know, heard AJ say, if you're not growing, you're dying. I firmly believe in that, right? And so being able to communicate who we are, what we are, you start to attract like-minded people.
What I've realized in all these years in the industry is that the growth conversation is different at a DSO level, where you're financial guys, and you know, we come all from finance backgrounds, and the growth conversation for us is same store growth, EBITDA growth, rev top line growth, but that's not the language that resonates with the clinicians, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you've got to be able to translate, because at the end of the day, as you said, all we want is help patients, right?
Right.
And somehow, so how do you translate that? Like, how do you get doctors to talk? How do you talk about growth without it sounding like some Wall Street guy like you or me, telling them, "Hey, well, we gotta achieve 20% EBITDA growth this
Yeah,
way."
I think that's a great question. I think that number one, a lot of it has to come from the practices themselves. If I'm dictating what they're going to do, that's not a partnership, and it's harder to get by. And we were just talking before about what is leadership. Leadership is the ability to influence people. And how do you influence people? By setting a good example, by being trustworthy, and by doing things that, you know, they can get behind. And so I think for us, number one is we have doctors that are partners in all of our practices. They maintain substantial ownership.
Right.
They're the clinical leaders in that practice. Getting their buy-in on things we're doing is critically important. Same thing with the practice leader. In my mind, every office needs a strong non-clinical and a strong clinical leader, and we call them leaders. They're not office managers, they're practice leaders.
That is awesome.
And then I think the second component of it is explaining the why. We always talk about that, but if I'm going to tell someone, there's a difference between saying, hey, I want to grow 20%, and just saying, hey, do you think it's good for our patients? And we have 62% of patients that are scheduled for a future appointment. So 38% that are not. Do you think it's good for our patients to not come in regularly for recare?
Absolutely.
Right? You ask the questions, and you let them answer, and you say, okay, well, if we all agree we want to improve that, then here's how we're going to track that. Here are the leading indicators, and then the execution component of it is who's accountable. Because if you don't have accountability and you don't have a scoreboard, guess what? Nothing's happening. So I really think it's all about, and we always talk about building credibility. Credibility doesn't come overnight. When we partner with a practice, I say to my team, we're starting like 6 feet under. The day I meet them. Change is always scary. Growth is intriguing to me, but not to others. And so we're building up our credibility, our equity, and then over time we're able to use that because people understand, again, it goes back to the values and the demonstration that we're here for the patients, we're doing things for the right reasons. It's not about what you're saying, it's what about you're doing. Once you do that and you get people on board that you're genuine, they will follow you as long as you explain to them why. Why is it good for the patient, the team, the practice, and at the end of the day, them, right?
And that's it, you nailed it. That's the secret to changing people's behavior. You can't just go in and tell them, okay, well, I need you to produce $1,200 a day. I mean, that's not how the conversation should go. The conversation should go around, what do we think about improving oral health for patients? What do we think about periodontal disease? How do we make sure that our patients are in their optimal health? And those conversations are going to, now once the hygienist buys into that idea, then they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that the future appointment's there, the maintenance people are coming in, and there's people moving into restorative. That's automatically going to happen when you have the buy-in from a patient perspective.
Yeah, and once you have that, I think that it's very easy to identify the opportunities to actually execute on them without driving turnover, right? Is the challenge. And so I think that once they then tell you, hey, we do care about periodontal disease, we care about this, then I say, okay, great, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you the perio percentage, or the percentage of visits, patients over 35 in your practice versus all of our other practices. Because one of the big advantages that we have as a group is data. And information. And by the way, okay, here's a practice down the street from you where 30% of patients are in perio-related programs. You're at 1%. Would you like to talk to Mary? And Mary can you can go and shadow Mary for a day, and we'll also get you a refresher education course on perio and so on. that's where it becomes powerful, and they feel like we're all aligned again with that patient focus, and the outcome of that is growth.
Correct.
But it's not it's the reverse. It's reverse engineering it.
Correct.
In some ways, and
How are you leveraging technology? You talked about data right now. You know, obviously, one of the things we talk about a lot is having data and having intelligence. How are you leveraging technology to really give you the right information at the right time to make the right decisions so that you're moving forward?
Yeah, and we had talked about how do we drive growth, right? And I think it all ties together. It's just amazing proliferation, with technologies like artificial intelligence and Patient Prism of ways we can get better insights, automate actions, and get information we could have never gotten even
Correct.
a year or two ago. And so at the end of the day, the way I simplify, if we're trying to grow a dental practice, right? There's only two ways to do it in my mind. And our practices they're not, these are generational patients. They're not people that aren't taking care of themselves coming in and they're never coming in again. These are, it's a steady recurring model. And so at the end of the day, I start out with active patients. The first driver is active patients. We define those as patients over the past 18 months.
Okay.
Active patients, there's two drivers to it. The first is retention.
Right.
Okay? It's very hard to fill up a bucket with a big hole in the bottom.
That's
of it,
right. That is correct.
Very, very hard.
Very hard.
It takes a lot of work, right? So that's component one. Component two is new patients, right?
Right.
And so on the active patient side, just understanding what is your retention rate of patients? How many patients are we losing a month, right? By provider, right? Is
By
critically
provider.
important, right?
That's interesting.
Right? We can do that by provider. There's just so much you can drill down to, but just getting that as a metric people can focus on. On the new patient side, everyone, it's so sexy to have. How many new patients do you have? I've got 25. Oh, you have 25. We're at 40, right? Right. I think at the end of the day, there's a whole component of it that, looking at.
Wow. Well, we got some music playing.
Yeah, we got
That's
some
good.
music. Nice. Live music. So the other component to new patients, though, is okay, the number of new patients is the outcome, but let's start at the top of the funnel. Are we answering the calls?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. We know that about a third of calls
don't
go
get
unanswered. So I would say so are we answering the calls? And then if we're answering the calls, are we converting? And if we're not converting, why? And so we leverage Patient Prism to have that information and not to micromanage our team,
right,
but to really help them understand. Like a lot of times, you can double new patient growth without spending $1.
Correct.
You do a better job answering the phones.
Amen, sir.
And you
right.
actually are open-minded to being self-aware about some things you might be able to do better in answering those calls. So that's one component is the active patients, and the second component of it is level of care per active patient. I don't say production or collections.
Level of care.
Level of care.
That's a great,
because it's
great
not
lingo.
Production and collections. Those are outcomes of providing the care that our patients need, right? And may not, and so at the end of the day, those are the two levers, and that's the way we think about it. In my mind, driving if we can't drive active patient growth, we're not going to ever be able to sustainably grow our practice.
Correct. No, I love the answer, level of care, right? Because when that conversation happens, everything falls into. If you're giving the best level of care to your patients, production collections automatically will take care of itself. One of the last questions I have is, you came, our backgrounds are kind of similar. We both operated I still am in the hedge fund space. How did that prepare you, the long-term private equity or the hedge fund thinking model? How did that prepare you to run a dental support organization?
Yeah, not very well is the answer in hindsight.
Okay.
It's interesting because coming from finance, I only had 2 direct reports at any point in time, and it really wasn't about leadership. It was more like dictatorship, right? Do this, do that,
Yeah.
And so I think that the advantage that it did give me, I always tell my doctors, they're like, how do you know so much about dentistry? And I'm like, well, I don't know how to place a crown, right? But for the past 15 years, I've been analyzing companies and businesses.
That's
and
right.
I think what I can help bring to the table, it's sort of my partner, Dr. Mason, and I talk about, it's sort of like the Billy Bean analogy, right? Where, I give the analytics, I give the visibility on what's actually happening, and I can understand the drivers of the practice in a very granular way. And by providing that information to my partners, that gives them the visibility to actually create action and to address them.
And I get it. I mean, I think the focus on data and actionable intelligence is what that industry gives you, right? Because we're all data driven in that business. because it's all data. It's not really anecdotes or it's opinion. It's just data driven.
And what you can't measure, you can't manage. So if I can't measure, marketing ROI in a channel, is it really, what are we doing, right? How are we even if we're successful, we're not even gonna know it. Maybe we should be spending more money on this channel. Maybe we should be spending less, but if I can't know it, it's not something that,
This is such a fascinating conversation. I want to eventually do a whole set of sessions with you, because I think what you've said today and touched on are various things that a lot of DSOs are struggling with. Change management is a big thing.
It's huge, yeah.
Getting team retention is a big thing. You touched upon that. Growth is a big thing. Conversations about growth is a big thing.
Yeah.
And somehow you've taken the Wall Street in you and humanized it in a way that it motivates people to be their best selves in terms of the care that they're going to deliver to the patients. And that's beautiful. And I think that's why I'm excited to see you grow over the next few years, and we're excited to partner with you.
Yeah.
We really appreciate the business, and we appreciate what you're doing in this industry, and that's going to really change people's lives. And I'm so honored to be in this industry that really has such a big impact.
Yeah, I feel the same. I appreciate your comments, and certainly really always enjoy picking your brain and understanding what's going on in dentistry. But I think you nailed it on the head, where it feels good to be, this has to be a win-win for everyone, right?
Right.
We don't grow, we don't succeed if our patients aren't getting better care and better outcomes.
Absolutely.
It feels great, and everyone is genuinely focused on, really improving access to care and quality of care. So, it's really been enjoyable. I've really had a great time, being in this industry versus my prior hedge fund life.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, and we'll talk more soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.